Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 8.3 PTR, where Horror Forging, as we were calling it, has been revealed to us. The replacement for Titanforging. It is known as Corruption, Corrupted. That is what it's going to be called. In fact, we've already been playing with this without knowing it. When the PTR came up, there were rings available that you could purchase to test out. I don't think they're on this guy. They're on another guy, maybe. That you could put on. I have some of them here. That actually gave you debuffs. They didn't say, well, they do say corrupted on them. Corrupted ring, overconfident. There were these rings that gave us certain effects, and we did some playing around with them, and I wanted to show them in a video. But it turns out these are basically what the new items, the new Titanforging, is going to be. It's the idea of Kiss Curse, a common term used in RPGs, where there is a benefit to, but there's also a downside that you have to bear in mind. How much of this downside do you want? As you can see right now, I have 4 debuffs that I am carrying around with my character, all do various things. So I'm currently carrying one that's a Grasping Tendrils that will slow my movements if I take damage. I also have Grand Delusions. Taking damage is a chance to summon a thing from beyond. You will have seen this in my PTR raid test videos. I was trying those rings out, where this creature will crawl towards you and then hit you. A Corrupted Zone, which will spawn a Void Zone underneath you that will deal damage to you. And I have something called Creeping Death, which is damage taken increased by 29% and healing reduced by 29%. So this is because I'm wearing Corrupted Armor, the new Corrupted Armor. Now, before we get into this, because I've seen the community outpour about this, so we're going to be as reasonable as we can here, because this system is absolutely not finished. There's a few things we need to bear in mind. Whether you like it or not, or don't want to hear it, is irrelevant. It doesn't change that it's probably true, is that Blizzard does not want to repeat the Legion to BFA transition. This is something we talked about before 8.2 came out, let alone 8.3. In that Blizzard does not want to give us abilities and spells and toys that we're going to miss going into the next expansion, whatever that will be. That was exactly what happened going from Legion to BFA, and people got very upset by it. In fact, it may have really hurt the game in some respects, and hopefully we'll see what Blizzard does with this in terms of them giving us fun toys to play with if they feel they're going to take them away at the end of the expansion. This is why we got things like the Essence system. We're not really going to miss the Essence system. We're not really going to miss Azerite armor, which is likely to be going away, or at least iterated on in some point. And we're likely not to miss the idea of corrupted items. They thematically fit with what we're doing now with N'Zoth. But ultimately, if Blizzard decides they don't want to keep this system, then they can get rid of it, and people probably aren't going to be that pissed off by it. And the reason for that is the bonuses are very sterile. The plus side, the Kiss portion of these items, is a little bit on the sterile side. So let me explain this system and what it's likely to be doing. So if I open my character here, you can see I have a corruption level of 79. So I've got this new thing that comes on here that when you start equipping these corrupted items, and again, Warforged Titanforge is gone. So the way they're letting us test this, you can see I have a bag full of stuff, and it probably looks remarkably similar to something you've been doing recently, certainly if you've been doing Nazjatar and you've been a raider. So what we have here is basically as if we just killed a boss and we're about to get an item. It's a normal Nyalotha raid item. So if we buy this, we're going to roll an item from this bag. And we got a belt. Now, as you can see, I got a corrupted belt. So there are non-corrupted items, the base items. This contains 14 corruption and increases the amount of versatility I gain from all sources by 3%. So it's absolute trash. It's absolute trash. Now, one thing you're going to notice from here is that the amount of corruption on these items is different, even if the bonus affix is exactly the same. Yes, you heard that correctly. So we've got a leech 2%. These are the same boots, same item level, crit mastery. It gives me 6 corruption, increases my leech by 2%. If I go to this one, same ones. These are haste mastery this time, increase my leech by 2%, same affix, but now it's 10 corruption. There is RNG and RNG on these items. So I mentioned briefly that these probably look like something you've been doing with Nazjatar. Indeed, it looks very similar to the benthic system. Now, it only looks this way because I've been buying lots and lots and lots and lots of items, selling them back, buying some more, getting rid of the non-corrupted stuff because that's just the baseline stuff, and then buying more to get this. So I've ended up with this sort of thing with a bunch of weapons. None of my weapons corrupted. However, the screenshot on MMO Champions front page does show that weapons will be corrupted as well. But looking at the different affixes. So this is how this system looks like it's going to work. You'll kill a boss that, say, drops the belt. Your leather belt. That belt can drop, but it can also then corrupt, right? So it can be the baseline item, but it can also corrupt. And if it corrupts, it will have one of several affixes attached to it. which you may or may not want. Now, that means that, yes, you are fishing for the really good items, particularly the ones that people are already dreaming about, which are these. Increase the damage you deal with critical strikes by X percentage. You can see I have several of them now. And even rolling as many times as I have here comes the RNG, I yet to have the belt. But that might be down to, you can see the rolling certainly favors certain items over others. I've only had like 2 of these, or 3 of these rings. Yet I've had many, many, many gloves that have given me these things. So that's kind of how this system is going to work, is you have to hope that your belt drops and then hope that your item rolls the right corrupted affixes, and then of course that you hope it is given to you. Now then, this does change some things that I think will be good in the eyes of probably the uneducated player. Without Warforging and Titanforging, item levels on certain items aren't going to jump around at all, which means trading gear in raids should be considerably easier, because you're not going to say get a trinket and then also get the Titanforged trinket of the same one, or the Warforged version, which is just 5 item levels higher, and be unable to trade it, because the item levels remain static. What this also means that if you're doing, say, mythic raiding content, the base item level will be better than what you can get in heroic. Heroic cannot Titanforge, say, up to a mythic level. That can't happen. So in the eyes of the uneducated player, that probably sees like you believe that mythic raiders want some sort of special snowflake treatment, despite the fact they're all rocking benthic gear, because most serious raiders just wear whatever's best. They'll probably see it as like, oh, you know, you get the best stuff from Mythic. You'll see that argument happening. However, as you could probably already tell if you are educated on the game a little bit, some of these affixes are considerably better than others. Like, considerably better than others. And you might get the Mythic ring, but it has some proc on it. There's some variety of ones here. Reduced damage taken for periodic effects. Your spells and abilities have a chance to grant a flash of clarity, reducing the cooldown of your next 3 spells by 2 seconds. Gloves of Abyssal Authority, leech 2%, amount of versatility you gain from sources, amount of haste you gain from sources, amount of healing received from sources, all kinds of things like this, which you'll be like, I really don't want that. What I do want is the crit ones, or I want the haste ones, or I want the crit source ones, right? Whatever yours might be, and vice versa, the other item is terrible, meaning that the item you could get from normal raiding and heroic raiding is actually better than this one, right? And it also does appear that random gem slots are also gone, right? So none of that happening, which makes it interesting to see what dual crafters are going to deal with coming into this patch, because the corrupted rings, some of them are very, very powerful. As you can see, 2% crit damage, increase the damage you deal with critical strikes by 5% on that ring. I mean, that is huge. That is absolutely huge, especially when you start stacking these things up. So in one way, it's achieved something that I think a lot of the more casual player base probably thinks is a good thing in terms of the item levels and stuff. The trading thing is universally good. There's no doubt about that. You'll be able to trade anything you want now, which is considerably better than the system we had in the past. However, it still hasn't solved the problem that definitely the harder content provides the best gear. Like, technically it will once the roll is right, but we're still going to kind of be doing this benthic system of trying to acquire this stuff. Now, as you add more corruption to you, because each item comes with corruption, which is, again, RNG, how much corruption these items give is totally random. Absolutely random. It's similar, but it is randomized. So you have to bear that in mind. 16, 12, as I showed with the gloves before, it is randomized how much corruption they give you. The more corruption you gain adds more of these debuffs to you. So if I start stripping away some of these items, you're going to know that my stuff starts dropping down and down and down. Once I can get out of combat. There's an annoying bug on the PTR right now, which constantly puts you in combat. It's usually a corrupted item that actually does it. It should drop in a second. There we go. So if I start taking this stuff away, you're going to notice these debuffs start sort of disappearing, ideally. Yeah, you can see that one's disappeared now, and we're down to here. My corruption's down to 46. So that means that there's going to be a sweet spot that you want to hit in terms of how much corruption your character is carrying. And that's probably going to be around 50. It looks to be around 50 for me as to where it goes up. I haven't got something with 4 corruption right now to test that out. But there's 6, so I think over 50 gives you the... Oh, that's the wrong ring. But you get the idea. You'll be looking for this sweet spot. After that, these things start getting really deadly because you start getting this creeping death. And creeping death is really bad. Creeping death is really bad. This... ever stacking debuff. This is the last debuff you will get, but as more corruption you add, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. Going around even doing world quests with Creeping Death got me killed very, very easily, even taking like 25% extra damage. Compared to what I could already do, I just did a little bit of Najatar to test it out in the real world environment. Having Creeping Death plus everything else is super deadly. The void zones that it spawns underneath you, I'm going to show them off, don't worry about it. Could start doing like 160k ticks, and you're like in a position where you just can't get away from it at that point. There's no outplaying it, which is something I'm reading everywhere. It's like, just outplay it, Forehead. It's like, okay, you definitely don't do raid encounters. There is definitely no room for that in your book. That's understandable, but not unsurprising for people who don't know some of the scenarios that we end up in, that it might end up that way. But Creeping Death is a no-no. Creeping Death is a real bad situation to be in. You don't want that. So you might be saying then, how do we manage this corruption? Well, you could drop your corruption, okay? You could drop your corruption. So the new essences that are coming will be slotted into here. So this isn't in the PTR yet this slot has been confirmed will be the corruption reduction slot. And from what I know, you can't put corruption reduction essences into any other slot, although you can right now. So if we look here at, say, Spark of Inspiration, you can actually see that it has a unique effect which reduces your corruption by 10. So potentially you could put your corruption up to, say, 59, slap this thing on and go down to 49, and therefore you will no longer have Creeping Death. So you can manage it that way. The likelihood is with this scenario, because there's two things you can do. One, you can cleanse items. We've seen the script that it exists, but it's not in the game yet, which I wish they would have done so we could have tested this properly, but I'll come back to it, don't worry. Is that, let's say you do get a really good mythic ring, but it has a proc on it that you really just don't want. Certainly it's going to give you a level of corruption you don't want to deal with. And therefore, you would like, I would rather this thing wasn't corrupted. You will probably be able to cleanse it, removing the corruption, but also removing the buff. So it's just a flat ring, right? That's what you can do. And you'll be able to mishmash items. Also, what you're probably going to be doing is carrying around with you older gear so that you can manage your corruption levels. So you had a corrupted ring, which was a decent proc, but then you got the corrupted legs, which had the, say, the crit bonus on them. You really want those, but it makes your corruption too high to have both. You could swap the other one out, but you might want to bring the other one back later when you replace, say, your gloves. So you'll have this kind of management going on of your corruption levels in order to make this work. On top of that, it does give you a reasonably cool visual effect. As you can see, I'm sort of like blue and dark and evil. It doesn't show on there very well, but it's okay. It's like, you can see it there. You can see this like blue effect that's happening with my character right here. That comes with your higher levels of corruption, the more that effect shows on your character. But from what I can tell, you can't really see it if you have the glyph of stars. So unlock. Unlock if you have that. That's just going to be something you deal with. So we have this cleansing system. But there's also another new stat, which you might have noticed, which is corruption resistance. Now, some people are confused to think the legendary cape is involved here. It's not. That reduces sanity. But it does do the same sort of thing that I believe corrupted resistance is going to do. What these two systems are in terms of sanity and corruption, in my opinion right here, are stuff to kind of get you interested in gear, which is a subjective thing. I'm not going to say whether these bonuses are interesting or not. I've seen some people who are super happy to have these kind of bonuses. I think they're a bit boring. What they are do is long-term nerfs to the game as BFA starts to close its doors. That's really what it is for me. So let me explain that. The legendary cape, for example, is, as you can see, mine is rank 15. We can look at this from the idea of things that are really unlikely. It's highly unlikely that on week 1 of 8.3, I'm going to be able to get a rank 15 legendary cape. Likelihood is, BFA, it's time gated. Probably similar to something like an island expedition quest, but involving horrific visions. It's probably from Rathion, who stood over here. You can see he's in the back there. Rathion will have some sort of quest. In fact, I have the quest now. It might even be in the game, but this was my priority right now. Is go and do a horrific vision. I will reward you 1 orb of madness, which is what they're called, or horrific core, sorry. I will give you 1 horrific core in order to upgrade your legendary cape, and then over 15 weeks, eventually you'll have a rank 15 cape. Now, it's also highly unlikely that N'Zoth will not be killable week 1, either on normal and heroic or even mythic. In fact, the mythic, even if it does go to 2 or 3 weeks, is probably not just because of the legendary cape. Which means that as the legendary cape gets bigger and stronger, the less effect the N'Zoth fight will have on you, making it easier for players over the course of time to complete that content. Because we do know the N'Zoth encounter involves sanity in some way. So although the legendary cape does have an effect in the horrific visions, check out the videos on those if you haven't, it's also a slow nerf to the N'Zoth fight itself, making it considerably easier. So we can imagine that similar to Yogg-Saron, which also had a sanity mechanic, is that throughout the N'Zoth encounter, the more things that are avoidable that you get hit by, drains your sanity, and then ultimately if you just start getting hit by everything, you're going to go insane and be mind controlled or something like that. However, as you make your legendary cape stronger, you can make more mistakes, it's easier, the less your sanity will drain, and you're going to be okay, right? Similar with this, I can imagine that corruption resistance, which isn't implemented yet, is something that will build up over the course of the expansion. And the likely candidate for this is actually going to be the last tier here, which continuously upgrades, similar to what we had in Legion, where it had the, I can't remember the name of the effect, but ultimately once your Legion weapon, your artifact weapon was capped, you continuously just leveled into one stat, which just gave you a small damage bump each and every level. It'll be some similar system, I can imagine, that just increases your corruption resistance, meaning that over the course of the expansion, as BFA kind of winds down, your corruption resistance will become so high that you can wear as many of these negative effects as possible, because you're naturally going to counter the negative effects, just giving you really strong gear without any drawbacks. That's what it looks like to me. On the face of this, after playing around it, I was like, this stuff looks like it's going to be super, super annoying as I head over to show you some of these effects. This stuff looks like it's going to be super, super annoying unless it's naturally counted over time, because a lot of people have raised concerns that, say, again, less educated players might just strap on every piece of corrupted gear they have, meaning they're going to take obscene amounts of damage, but their damage meter would be higher if someone would just heal them, right? You're going to have that kind of scenario, and over time, that will naturally just eliminate itself. Like, that problem will already go away. So I could certainly see a system where you're grinding out AP. I know it sounds horrible, but it really fits the mold of BFA, in my opinion, where you'll be just grinding out artifact power to gradually reduce or increase your corruption resistance, meaning you can wear more of these corrupted items and therefore become stronger and stronger and stronger over the course of the expansion. And of course, with artifact knowledge going hand in hand with that, then the likelihood is over time that you will just naturally, even on alts, be able to equip some of these things. So I'm just going to fire off a few spells here. So I'm going to show you the Void Zone mainly because it's huge. Remember, there's only like 3 actual effects. One's the Thing from Beyond, which involves taking damage, so we could get hit, but you've seen it if you've watched any of my other videos. It's a little creature that appears. But the Void Zone is enormous. And at this level, it's going to do tremendous damage to me, even at 79, which is only a couple of corrupted items, I might add. I think I'm wearing like 4, which has got me to 79, or 5 items, which I'm pretty sure everything can corrupt. Every single last thing can corrupt. Now, you'll notice it's not proccing immediately. You're right, it doesn't proc immediately by any means. It has a random proc. Show it off. I don't know whether they've deactivated or something like that, but I'm not getting it to happen, and it should have happened by now. It absolutely should have happened by now. So I'll show a clip of it. For whatever reason, it's just not working. PTR sometimes. PTR be PTR. So that is the system. Until I figure out exactly or see exactly how corruption resistance works, although I have a pretty good idea how they're going to do with it, then it doesn't mean a whole lot. Because all we know so far is it's not that different from Titanforging. You're still getting ludicrously powerful upgrades at the cost of RNG. That is the nature of the beast. It solves some of the issues. It certainly will fix mentality reasons for a lot of other people. Certainly in terms of like getting item level and only caring about item level, that should hopefully ease off a little bit. Although, because unless systems come in place with what they could have rated at IO for what affixes you're carrying or what your corruption level is, more than likely, because there will be players who just like slap corrupted items all over their character and are like, why am I dying all the time? Why am I dying all the time? Yeah, what a mystery this all is. What a mystery this all is. But it's a wait and see scenario on that one. So for now, I'm not that angry with it. I'm disappointed because it's not a good system. Is it better than Titanforging? I mean, they're both plucked from the same plant as far as I'm concerned. It's RNG loot, and you know how I feel, which is that I don't see the problem with just having set loot. I don't know why it needs to come with more fluff. And oh, there it is. Hey, there we go. Look how huge it is. It's enormous, right? Look how much damage it does for me in this much corruption. Ooh, is it going to kill me? This thing can crit. Yeah, it did. Yeah, this thing hurts. You can see it's ticking on me for 100,000 at that point. If I check my combat log, I think we did see a crit in the middle. Yeah, it did. It crit me for 164,000 damage. My worry, certainly from a raider's perspective, is I've done like 50% of the fights in the Neolotha raid, and I could tell you we were just testing out the rings, which do involve the thing from beyond. There you can see this ring here that I've tested all the rings. Spawns a thing from beyond. Is that we got asked to take them off because they're more hassle than they're worth to have all these things going on. If we're to look at, say, the Ashara fight or the Zakul fight, as a sort of an idea of what we're going to be facing in Neolotha, some of these debuffs seem completely unworkable. There might be a reality where it's, yes, it's way more damage, but some of these things are unworkable. And it will be a case of, you'll see again, these sort of uneducated players saying just like it's a skill gap. There's not much skill gap in having to bait something to somewhere and having a giant void zone form underneath you. That's not a skill gap. There's lots and lots of unavoidable damage, and you can't pick and choose these debuffs. Like, this is just based on your corruption level. So it's not like I can say, oh, Void Zone is fine here, or Grand Delusion is fine here, but Grasping Tendrils isn't. You can't do that. It's just based on your corruption levels, which means that if being slowed is going to get you killed, then that means you have to drop your corruption to practically 0, which is what we might see in the early days, which goes hand in hand with the idea that this is a slow nerf to the game over time, is that very realistically in the early days, if you're on cutting edge progress, then some of this stuff just isn't viable. It just doesn't work. Like, you'll have to rely on your one essence to kind of counter 1 or 2 of the items as best as you can and have a really slow effect. Because you can see it doesn't tell you how much it slows you by, but it's depending on how high your corruption is. So we'll wait and see on that. It might be the case that just over time you have gear sat in your bags that you want to equip that you just can't yet because it's unworkable in the content you're dealing with. So that could be a thing that we deal with as well. So we'll stay tuned on it. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.